In Chapter 13 of Just Mercy, Recovery, Brian Stevenson writes about the challenges of life after prison through the example of Walter Macmillan. Walter Macmillan was freed in 1993, but even though he was a free man, Macmillan was still tested by many obstacles. Stevenson uses anecdotes, repetition, and rhetorical questions to explain why Macmillan and hundreds of other exonerated people continue to suffer in the real world. First, Stevenson uses repetition in the quote, "They receive no money, no assistance, no counseling, nothing from the state that wrongly imprisoned them." There are a lot of no's in that sentence, highlighting the complete absence of support from a government that subjected some of their innocent people to years of imprisonment. This rhetorical choice can also inform the reader of what former prisoners need to return to normalcy. As the repetition in the quote shows, exonerated people get nothing. Macmillan questions why that would bother me now that I was free. Why do I keep thinking about this? This rhetorical question puts the reader and Macmillan in the same boat. Stevenson assumes the reader thinks freed prisoners can simply become free, unbound American citizens, and Macmillan wonders why his past is still haunting him. However, Macmillan's question insinuates his mind is still burdened by past experiences and unresolved feelings. This highlights the psychological scars left by systemic injustices, suggesting that freedom is not easily attained or experienced when the emotional and mental effects of trauma linger. And of course, as a rhetorical question, readers are encouraged to think about it throughout the chapter. Now, there are many ways Macmillan and hundreds of other wrongfully convicted men and women were affected by these emotional scars. Stevenson decides to write about two anecdotes about the effects. The first story is about the contrast between the way Macmillan tells the media about his story at two different times. While he's in prison, Macmillan received a lot of media attention. Stevenson said, "Walter tells a story with such good humor, intelligence, and sincerity that heightened the horror our audiences felt that the state had been determined to execute this man in all of our names." Just look at this clip of him calmly handling an interview.
You want to execute the wrong man.
You didn't kill Rhonda
No,
Marshall.
sir, I ain't never seen Rhonda Marshall a day in my life. God knows I ain't.
Where were you on the day of the murder?
At my house.
Did you ever go into Monroeville on the day of the
No,
murder?
sir.
You never went into town?
Never
then?
went to Monroe, period.
Some years later, after he is released, Macmillan feels the impacts of being on death row for 6 years. He shares his story in this fashion to a Swedish news outlet.
What happened? Does it haunt you? So you just be thinking about, you always just to be looking back all the time. You know this man done this to you, and you might do it again.
The vivid imagery of a deeply scarred man delves into the emotional aspects of the effects. The introspective change over time of Macmillan's own interpretation of his time on death row directly relates to the magnitude of the social and emotional effects. In order to detail the economic effects of being exonerated from death row, Stevenson tells another anecdote about Macmillan's financial instability. Stevenson says in the book, "He told me that his junkyard business wasn't going great. When he described his finances, it became clear he was spending the money we'd secure for him more quickly than seemed prudent." This anecdote does two things. First, it alerts the reader to the effect prison time and stress has on Macmillan's judgment and mental health. Second, it shows the vicious cycle Macmillan was fed into once he was released from death row with no money or assistance from the government, even when he was innocent. Macmillan's financial troubles reveal the systemic failure to provide adequate support for exonerees. Clearly, exonerated prisoners face a lifetime of injustice due to minimal help from the government, leading to a variety of chronic personal issues. Macmillan's difficulties illustrate the broader systemic failures that prevent true recovery, reinforcing Stevenson's argument that the system must provide greater support and accountability for those who have been unjustly incarcerated.